The mission of the Peel Mansion and Victorian Gardens is really to encourage our community to get out and explore the history of the Peel Mansion and the Victorian Gardens. The mansion was built in 1875 and it is just incredibly beautiful.
Peel Mansion is important because of the history itself. Northwest Arkansas at the time was in turmoil before this was built, and the fact that the Peels were able to overcome all that turmoil and build a beautiful mansion that they did and extend the mansion to people in the area too who had fallen on hard times. They were a very benevolent family.
My first encounter was the Peel Mansion as a haunted house. Driving by and seeing it shuttered with vines growing all over it and not really knowing what it was. I've come to know it as a very important place in Bentonville development, the family being part of the business community and the church community and the education community, our history in agriculture, apple industry, our connection to the American Indians in the territory of Oklahoma. Colonel Peel was involved in settling disputes among the 5 civilized tribes. Also that Colonel Peel was a U.S. representative and traveled to Washington, D.C. all the way from Bentonville. In fact, I think he was the first Arkansas-born member of the United States House of Representatives from Arkansas. It just has a lot of significance to our present-day community.
The Peel Mansion was actually kind of founded on a love story between Samuel West Peel and Mary Emmeline Berry. Colonel Peel, before he was Colonel Peel, was in love with Mary Emmeline Berry, and he was asking her to marry him, to take his hand in marriage, on a couple of occasions. She continued to decline, and eventually he said, Mary Emmeline, if you will marry me, I will build you a beautiful mansion that is very similar to how and where you grew up in the state of Alabama.
Well, I think that Mrs. Peel really loved Mr. Sam, even though she didn't want to marry him until he promised that he'd build her this house.
They married, they had 11 children together, and the mansion was completed in 1875.
When it was built, there was 180 acres of apple trees around here. And Bentonville was just downtown, a little square. The Peels lived here from 1875 until around 1902. Mary Emmeline passed away in her own bed upstairs. A little while later, Colonel Peel decided he didn't want to live in the house anymore. The kids were grown up and were gone. So he moved into town and lived with the daughter and her family. Over the next 100 years, the house passed through several different owners. And over the course of that time, it was pretty much neglected for many, many, many years. And so it was in pretty sad shape. And then in the late 1980s, a lady purchased the house, and she was going to restore it, make it her home and also her business. And so she moved in and was here a few years. And then she heard that Walmart was building a supercenter back here. So she decided that she would just go ahead and sell the property. And she did. She sold it to the Waltons. And the first inclination, they were just going to tear it down and make it part of the parking lot. But instead, they did some historical research and determined that the people who had built it and lived here had been very important to Arkansas, especially after the war. So they founded the Peel Foundation, donated the house and the grounds to the foundation, and then through a lot of generous donations by a lot of people, we were able to restore the house to how you see it today.
The mansion actually has 16 rooms, it has 9 fireplaces, and 3 porches.
The old house is Italianate design, so the ceilings are about 12.5 feet high. The walls are 18 to 21 inches thick.
This mansion is incredibly historic, and it truly provides a peek in the past to the Victorian era, which was an era of modesty, high morality, and opulence.
Many family members have brought us things that they have kept for many years and donated to the mansion, but my favorite is Old Bucky. Now, Old Bucky is about 130 years old. He's an Excelsior horse. Would you believe that actually 4 generations of Peel children have ridden on this horse? Now the family is gratefully longing back to the mansion here. So we are all enjoying Old Bucky.
This is a secret hiding place I'm about to show to you. It's something that was built into the staircase, and it was from the time the house was built in 1875. So I'll show you exactly where that is. So as you can see, unless it was pointed out to you, you wouldn't really have an idea that was there. So that is the little secret hiding place that the Peels built into the house.
One thing I love telling the story about is the parlor and the historic nature of the piano that's in the parlor. The box grand piano made out of rosewood, built in about 1870. And the shape of the piano made it convenient to travel on the back of a wagon for moving, but it also got the nickname of being a morning piano, the kind of M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G piano, because of its shape. And you could actually set a coffin on the piano for the funeral, which are often held in the homes.
My favorite place on the grounds is the Victorian Garden. It is so beautiful. And especially in the evening when the streets are quiet, you can hear the crickets and the frogs, and it really sets you back in the late 1800s.
My very favorite place on the grounds are the grounds. I love the big trees. I love the 19th century garden. I love the haunting beauty that the Peel House still has to this day. Even though in its prime it was a much larger acreage, it still has that mysterious atmosphere. And another thing that's a very favorite part of mine is the third floor. The tower on the Peel Mansion was the schoolroom for the Peel children. And if you go up there, the chalkboard is still on the wall where they used to teach their children. I guess it was the first homeschool in Bentonville. And then my third favorite aspect of the Peel House is the proximity of the Lynch log cabin. When you come in, the contrast between the log cabin and the Peel Mansion, which by today's standards is not really a mansion, but when you realize that in the 1870s, many people still lived in a log cabin, this was a mansion. So those three things kind of stand out to me as very special about this property.